Yeah.
If you folks don't know, it's the publication day for this book, My Time Will Come, Ian Manuel's book here. This is the launch event. I'm very grateful to have both Ian Manuel and Messiah Ramkissoon here joining us this evening. So you know, I wouldn't be doing my duty if I didn't tell you that we have signed copies of Ian's book available. He was generous enough to sign some book plates for us so that you could have a signed copy. This is also a special event, not only because we are joined by two incredible poets and activists this evening, but we're also partnering with two organizations that do mean a lot to us here at Green Apple. This event is presented in partnership with the Youth Justice Network and the Prisoners Literature Project. And I'm wondering if, Messiah, would you like to tell the folks a little bit about the Youth Justice Network, where you're the Director of Programs and Partnerships?
Absolutely. Greetings, good afternoon, well, good evening to everyone out there. As she stated, my name is Messiah Ramkissoon. I serve as the Senior Director of Programming and Community Partnerships for an organization called the Youth Justice Network, formerly known as Friends of Island Academy. We've been in existence for 30 years, specifically working with age 60 to 21-year-olds affected by incarceration. We were founded on the school floor of Rikers Island 30 years ago. So at that time, there was no organization currently present in New York City to serve as an exclusive safety net for 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds up to 21-year-olds who were incarcerated or detained rather on Rikers. So even though it was legal for adolescents to be locked up in New York, there was no organization present to be that support system for them upon release. So that's where we came into fruition, to be that support for young people coming off of Rikers. We currently provide an array of services, starting from court mitigation to youth advocacy, to employment training and development, employment placement, mentorship. So it's really holistic in terms of our approach, but the goal is really to support a young person with whatever resources and tools that they need to aid in a sustainable and healthier life path upon coming home from jail. So that's the work that we do. We have a very talented staff of people who are very diverse in nature, but all bring something very impactful, and we work together cohesively. And that's why I met Ian during his time working at the Youth Justice Network, and how we were able to develop a relationship. So I'm happy to be here on behalf of my team and to have this needed conversation with Mr. Manuel.
Thanks, Messiah. I really appreciate it. And we're really happy to be working with you and the Youth Justice Network. Y'all are doing good work and we appreciate it. I'd like to just mention very briefly our friends at the Prisoners Literature Project. They're a nonprofit based here in the Bay Area in Berkeley, California. They've been providing books, free books to incarcerated people for over 20 years. They send highly requested books to folks housed at San Quentin and also other places throughout the country. They're entirely volunteer run, and we have a very deep love and respect for the work that they do and the PLP does. And we have since we began having a dedicated section in our store for the PLP, for donation books for them, we started that as a regular section this past August. We've managed to donate over 1,000 books to them in that amount of time, which is thanks to you all for getting behind us and doing this work and with us, and we really appreciate it. So for the next week, we'd like to, it takes more than just books to send, right? So we need like packing materials, the PLP needs to pay their rent. So what we're gonna do for the next week, if you purchase a copy of Ian Manuel's book, we'll be donating 10% of each book sold to the PLP to pay for things that nonprofits need, like those things, shipping costs, etc. You've already shown an incredible amount of support to us and to them. And this way, not only are you supporting Green Apple, not only are you supporting the PLP, you are also supporting debut author Ian Manuel. So, and you also get a copy of the book. If that's not enough, you get a copy of the book at the end of it for yourself. So we have plenty of copies. I'll drop the link in the chat before the hour is over. I'd like to also point to the Q&A function during this hour. It's going to be at the bottom of your screen. Whenever you have a question, we'll get to it at the end. Whenever one comes into your head, ask it anytime. And without further ado, I'd like to formally introduce the writers and activists joining us this evening. Messiah Ramkissoon is a New York-based poet, hip-hop artist, and incarcerated youth activist. He's a 3-time champion of the nationally televised Apollo Theater Showcase, a graduate of Howard University. He's taught poetry at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. Beginning in 2007 and continuing to the present day, he's served as a mentor and programming liaison for incarcerated youth in Maryland, Washington, and at Rikers Island in New York City. As I said, he's the Senior Director of Programs and Partnerships for the Youth Justice Network. Please welcome Messiah Ramkissoon. Yay. And last but certainly not least, Manuel lives in New York City. He's a poet and an activist. You can find some of his poetry online and also in his book, My Time Will Come. You can find his writing as well in the New York Times. He's a motivational speaker at schools and social organizations nationwide. His book, My Time Will Come, a Memoir of Crime, Punishment, Hope, and Redemption is the reason we're here tonight. Please join me in welcoming Manuel. I'll let you folks take it away.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ian, brother, I'm honored to be here with you. I want to say first, congratulations on the release of My Time Will Come. I was blessed to be able to read it, and it was so inspirational on so many fronts. And it's a book that I really hope and I'm optimistic will be a catalyst in terms of pushing society forward, in terms of thinking and in terms of some things that we probably have been overlooking for a very long time. So I want to say thank you for bringing that much needed piece of material into fruition and just being vulnerable with sharing your story. So I do have some questions. I know that we're on a time capsule, so let's get right into it, man.
Well, thank you for having me, man. Thank you for agreeing to do this with me. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. It's my honor and my privilege. I mean, it's a blessing to be able to share this space with you. So, you know, your story, man, is one that's so layered. And it's one that I feel like is birthed in pain. It's birthed, you know, from a space of darkness, but it was that darkness that produced the light that we're able to talk to and appreciate so much in this moment, right? So there's a saying that says, hurt people, right? And it led me to a line in the early part of your book when you said, I begin here because I hurt someone very badly during a time in my life when I was blinded by my own hurt, right? And do you believe that the moment that led to your incarceration causing hurt to someone else was produced by the hurt that you inherited as a child so early in your stages of development?
That's a great question, and I can honestly say that's a question that no one has ever posed to me before. So I appreciate you asking it. Yes, I would agree that me doing the crime I did came from a place of pain. I was hurting. I was I was abused as a child. I grew up in a very tough environment. My mother was abusive to me as well. And, I was an outcast, so to speak, from the people that in my community when I first started before I started getting in trouble. And so it did come from a place of pain. And back then, before I realized that we're all part of the human family, the same tree, that, I felt like it wasn't at that time that me hurting somebody, even though I didn't intentionally do it, I didn't intentionally try to kill this lady, and I'm glad she didn't die. It came from a place of pain, and I realized that pain, it was something that I would live with and throughout my incarceration.
Thank you for sharing that. And you spoke about your mother and your relationship with her and some of the experiences that relates to abuse. In the book, you also spoke about your brother and, right, dealing with abuse from him. Right. So, there was a mantra of trauma in your book, but also a mantra of forgiveness, because you still wanted to keep a relationship with your mother. You still cared about your brother, even in his later stages when he experienced that his health was failing, and, it hurt you so much despite everything you previously went through with your mom and with your brother. So how were you able to sustain that love and that sense of compassion even for the ones who caused you hurt?
That's a great question. I think one reason that I was able to tap into that forgiveness is because of Debbie. The lady that I shot forgave me. We haven't touched on that yet. I'm pretty sure we will. But having someone whose life that I almost took, forgive me for what I did to them after I reached out to them and made a phone call, collect call to actually apologize for what I did. That played a part in the way I visualized and the people that had hurt me, from correctional officers to my family members, So I'm like, if this lady can forgive me for what I did to her, then I can forgive those people who have done less to me, because no one shot me, Someone did some bad things to me, but no one did shoot me. So that's one reason. And just another thing is, I had a longing to be connected family-wise, growing up in a broken home like the one I did, that was the only family that I knew. So I was trying to hold on to some semblance of a family. That's all.
When we talk about family and children, because I want to get into Debbie, but a little bit later on. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I want to get into Debbie in a few. But before we go there, because your story is really a journey that takes us from a very dark place, but then it comes into the light, right? And it's layers to getting there. But you going away so young at age 13, faced with a life sentence, 18 years in solitary confinement. I mean, we're in a country, United States of America, that literally incarcerates more of its children than any other nation in the world, right? So my question to you is, with this book that you created, this masterpiece that I feel like everyone should read, how intentional were you about wanting this book, about wanting My Time Will Come, to also be inspirational to legislators, to lawmakers, to game changers who are able to affect change, the gatekeepers, right? How intentional were you about wanting this piece to affect or even challenge the way that they handle policy and the way that it affects young people?
That's a great question, because it goes back to the core of my dreams. Growing up in solitary confinement, I know we'll get to that later, but growing up in solitary and being powerless, one thing you dream about a lot when you're in that circumstances is having power. You want to flip the switch and be the person that's able to control things after being at the brunt of oppression and control by your oppressor so much. You want to be able to want to control things. So when I was writing that book, when I was dreaming of writing that book in solitary confinement, one of the things I had hoped was to achieve a stature in life, in society, where people would call on me and I would be sitting down in front of Congress. I mean, Piper Kerman, they had Piper Kerman, who wrote Orange is the New Black, sitting down in front of Congress talking about solitary confinement. And one of the first things she said, that anybody who read my book, Orange is the New Black, know I have not spent one day in solitary confinement. But I spent 4 hours in a holding cell and I was ready to crawl the walls after spending 4 hours. So if she was ready to crawl the walls after spending 4 hours, imagine someone that spent 18 consecutive years there, right? So I did want to, I was intentional about writing that book in a way that would lead to legislation taking action to change some of the laws that they have in place for a child to be there in the first place.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Powerful answer. On the flip side of that coin, aside from legislators and lawmakers, there's someone who's going to read this who is currently where you previously were, right? What do you want that person to walk away with when they digest this?
Someone recently told me, one of my friends that I was in prison with, he said something to me that I never even thought about in that way. He said, Ian, you remind me of that Jay-Z song, Get the Brush the Dirt Off Your Shoulder, where Jay-Z said, it make us feel good just to see one of us make it. Just to see one of us make it, man. That's it, and that's what I see in you, Ian. And that's what I want to be. I want to be the hope to the people that I left behind, that I have a mantra that says the impossible is obtainable, right? That's my mantra. And so if I can come from a life sentence without the possibility of parole against all odds to doing this, then anything is possible, man. And so I just want them to hold on to hope and don't give up.
And your story is definitely a beacon of hope to anyone who've been through, I mean, even half of what you've been through, brother. I mean, it speaks volumes, you know, and just your resilience through the whole process, not giving up, appeal after appeal after appeal, you know,
Yes.
being behind those walls, you know, dealing with the corruption system, the system of corruption is doing everything possible to try to break you. And you even mentioned your mother, like one of the things that your mother said to you, I remember you said in the book, whatever you do, do not let it break your mind. It was something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
Do not let it break your mind. And that alone speaks hope speaks a message of hope to so many. I want to talk about Debbie, right? I know we're pressed for time, and I want to touch on some key points here. I remember in the earlier stages when you were first sentenced, you know, you laughed in the courtroom. It was a moment where you laughed, and Debbie automatically took it because she didn't get a chance to meet or know Ian in that moment, right?
Right.
This, you know, all she had a connection to was the experience as the victim, how that impacted her. And then seeing you laugh in court at that young age, I believe you were 13, 14 at the time. And, you know, in her mindset, she deciphered it as you didn't take this situation serious enough, right? Maybe there was some remorse missing. So what led you to the stage of empathy, you know, and how did you reach out to Debbie and eventually reconnect with her? What was that gateway that allowed for that to take shape?
And I'm gonna explain that, but I still feel the need to defend that 14-year-old kid
As
laughing,
you should. As you should.
Laughing in that courtroom. Like, for the audience that's listening, I was sitting, they separate the juveniles from the adults. I was sitting in the jury box, and it was a kid next to me that said something funny. I don't remember what the joke was. It was over 30 years ago. But he said something funny, and I laughed. I wasn't laughing at the mockery of I wasn't mocking the system. I wasn't laughing because I didn't think it was serious. I laughed because I was a little kid that heard something funny, not knowing that in this courtroom, there are actors and you have to play your role at all times. And I should have kept a stoic face at all times. But you know, how did I contact Debbie? My appeal got denied. My motion to mitigate sentence got denied, and my assigned attorney at the time sent me all of my paperwork. And inside the paperwork was Debbie's phone number and address. I was going through it, and something every human being in the world gets these feelings that compels us to do things. And the difference between some of the people that are successful in life and those who aren't is most of us push those feelings down and say, that's a stupid idea. It'll never work. Well, something told me to pick up the phone and call Debbie Collette, the lady that I had shot a year ago. I called Debbie. She accepted the Collette call. It was during Christmas, and I just remember saying, Miss Bakery, I'd like to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas and to apologize for shooting you in the face. And she said, Ian, she asked me a question no 14-year-old should ever have to answer. She said, Ian, why did you shoot me? And I just remember saying it all happened so fast. It was a mistake. I asked her, could I call back? She said, yes. I had 15 minutes more to talk. And I don't remember everything that I said in that conversation, but I do remember this. I said, can I write you? She said, yes. And that's how our correspondence started. And she became a friend and an advocate for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's a powerful story, man. How did you survive being so young? How did you survive 18 years in solitary confinement? And not just in solitary confinement, you know, with the intense abuse, you know, the tedious stress that also produced, you know, being alone so young in a time where your brain is still being developed. How did you survive such environment, such experience, rather?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I dived in the depths of my imagination. You know, reality was so painful that some people, the way I like to explain it is that people dive into their imagination and it's like diving underwater, like a fish in the water. But the fish has to come up for air, just a little bit of air. For those people who reality was too harsh to deal with, they stayed stuck in their imagination and developed schizophrenia, mental health illness. For me, I dived in the depths of my imagination and I come up for oxygen. And then I go back down again and I come out for oxygen. But I dealt with it most by, I developed this gift of poetry and a love. I always had a love for language. And I started writing poetry. I started by setting up obstacle courses in my solitary confinement cell of some of the greats. I challenged myself. I say, Ian, if you can't rewrite Maya Angelou's Still I Rise poem as good as she did, then you can't be successful in life. If you can't rewrite Eminem's Lose Yourself, then you can't be a successful rapper. If you can't rewrite Langston Hughes' poem, then you're garbage. And I set myself up like that, and I had nothing but time on my hands. And I would rewrite my poems and share them with my fellow prisoners. And if you're garbage in prison, they're gonna let you know it. They're worse than Simon Cowell and the Sandman at the Apollo where you won at, right? And so I recite these poems, and if you could touch the soul and the hearts of men who have been abandoned, who have been thrown away, who have been hurt and full of pain themselves, then you could reach anybody in the world, because they would clap for me and kick on the door and yell and scream like Michael Jackson that just came in there or something, you know? And so it was poetry that helped get me through.
That's amazing. And in your book, there's a lot of poetry. There's continuous seeds of poetry kind of planted all throughout, right? And do you mind sharing one of your pieces with us, if time allows?
Yeah, of course. There's so many poems, man. I think I'll just share Genie in the Bottle. That's the first one that comes to mind right now. And I wrote this, and it's about solitary confinement. It says, I'm the genie in the bottle the world has forgot. They put me in this abyss and closed up the top. I was a little boy when they did what they did, but time continued to tick, and I'm no longer a kid. My mother is dead, and so is my father. I've been abandoned by family while trapped in this bottle. But I hold on to hope that someone will open the top, answer my prayers, and help me out. Sometimes people pick up the bottle and put their eye to the hole, but instead of compassion, acting different and cold, I suffer sensory deprivation, a lost sense of direction. There's no mirror in this bottle for me to see my reflection. They say being lonely and alone are two different definitions, but it's only me in this bottle, so I fit both descriptions. What I need is a friend, someone to extend a hand. It could be as simple as picking up a pen. Someone who cares, accepts me for who I am, my magnetic personality and my baggage from the past. Someone who helps heal the sorrow, will work on building our tomorrows. Someone who refuses to leave me to die in this bottle. Yeah, man.
Powerful, powerful, powerful.
Thank
I
you.
mean, like someone who refuses to leave me to die in this bottle. You know, that takes me to I want to just read an excerpt from your book that when you were speaking to the judge on one of your appeals, it really resonated. These words really resonated with me when you said, Your Honor, I sit before you today as a grown man and respectfully request my release. I served 21 consecutive years for crimes that I wish were never committed. It is my hope that you reach the conclusion that retribution has been served, not just in years of incarceration, but in losses incurred during this painful experience. The loss of my mother, brother, father, grandmothers, and every immediate family member I had. But through it all, I never lost the audacity of hope or the ability to dream and continue to cling to faith as microscopic as a mustard seed that I must one day be free. My sitting before you today under these miraculous circumstances is fruition of that faith. It's not too late for me to be what I might have been. Your Honor, I ask for the opportunity to become it.
Woo! Yeah, man.
Just want that to resonate with the listeners. You know, the book is powerful, man. It's powerful. You know, your life alone is a testimony, as I said earlier, of hope for so many people, regardless of where they are, even if not people in solitary confinement. I mean, if you can be that optimistic in, you know, within those dark depths of your experiences and be able to rise from it, you know, sort of like the Phoenix, I think that it speaks volumes for so many more. And I also want to talk about where you originally come from, right? Central Park Village, right? That neighborhood in Tampa, Florida. And when people think about these types of communities and even your story and what, you know, it amounted to, it can be seen as all negative, right? I want to know, you know, is there, are there some positives or a positive from that, you know, environment that eventually helped you to survive as well? You know, aside from poetry, were there life lessons that you took from Central Park Village that was pivotal and critical to your, you know, future decades incarceration and even to present today?
Yeah,
You know?
I just think the love, unconditional love that my grandma instilled in me as a kid. There's that YMCA dude, Bob Gilbertson, that gave me my first job when I was a child. That showed that, you know, the work ethic of my grandmother as well. She spent 26 years working in Morrison's cafeteria. You know, that's in me. Like, I've done like so many. I called on the strength of my ancestors to help me endure and survive through so much. So definitely, I remember just the strength of my grandmother when I think about things that I can recall from my neighborhood that helped me, you know, that's a positive.
No, that's beautiful. But I'm happy you mentioned grandmother because I wanted to touch on grandma. And so grandma, you know, invested in you. Well, she did her best, right? And grandma was paying for you to go to private school.
Yes.
And then when grandma transitioned, you know, you were back in the public school system, and that's when the trouble started happening. Once you got in that public school system.
Great
Today,
point.
so today, when we talk about that school to prison pipeline, how different do you think it may have been if you didn't transition from what grandma was invested in, or the vision that she had for you based on her vantage point, to where you eventually evolved to being in those public school classrooms?
Wow, you know, that's something. Yeah, I mean, I can answer that readily. I'd have never got in trouble. I don't believe I'd have never went to prison. That is the direct answer to your question. I wonder, have I ever thought of it like that though? Because, you know, I was so in a rush to grow up. I was in such a rush to go to a regular school where all of my homeboys was going. I was tired of wearing the dark blue uniform and the light blue shirt. I wanted to be able to wear my own clothes, and I was just in a rush to go up too fast. And sometimes when you run and you rush and you don't know where you're going, you trip and fall and you hit a detour like I did, you know, and you end up incarcerated with a life sentence at a young age, man.
How was your experience in solitary confinement shape your views about adolescents being sent to the box?
Oh, that's an easy answer. No child should ever be placed in solitary confinement, you know, ever. Like, particularly for an extended period of time. There and for adults, there needs to be a cap placed on the amount of time a person could stay in solitary confinement. The UN says over 15 days is torture. Well, if over 15 days is torture, 18 years is got to be torture, you know? Definitely.
I mean, I fully agree. I mean, I've spent the last 14 years or so working particularly with adolescents. This was before they passed the raise the age law in New York City.
Right.
And, many of the youth who I was working with on Rikers, 16 and 17-year-olds at that time, were just being sent back and forth to the box for the most minuscule things, for not looking the right way while walking down the hallway. So that holds a special place in my heart. So I'm thankful that you answered that question. That moment, I want to fast forward a little bit to Equal Justice Initiative, right? And when you connected with Brian Stevenson, and when you received that letter from him, and it was at a point where trust kind of began failing for you, because I know you were reaching out to so many people. You mentioned reaching out to the National Action Network and Jesse Jackson and ACLU and all these different people, and boom, here comes Brian Stevenson, Equal Justice Initiative. So you automatically have questions like, is this real? Right? Is this real? Are you real? Are you all who you say you are? And so when you were able to get on the phone with him after reading that letter, and he gave you that assurance that, he's there for you and he will be following up, what was that feeling that you initially had? Was there still doubt, or was this a sense of optimism that maybe this could be leading to something?
Well, that was definitely optimism. There was definitely, my hope was renewed. He felt genuine,
Right. Right.
what, excuse my language, we have a bull jive detector in prison. Like, we're constantly evaluating and analyzing, are you coming from a place of authenticity? Are you running game? And when I was on the phone with the guy, I was like, he wasn't trying to get over on with me. He was not trying to get nothing out of me. He was there to save me. Right. So he said, I'm going to send 2 lawyers down there to see you, and then did that. Right. That started to build the trust right there, man. And I'll be forever thankful that God sent his soldier to break me out of prison.
How did it feel when he also included one of your poems in his book, Just Mercy?
Oh, man.
I mean, because I know you're very passionate about poetry, and it's your love. So how was that feeling when he said, I'm going to include one of your poems in my book?
I still remember when he wrote a letter to ask me for permission. Like, I'm like, this guy is asking me for permission to use my work, not knowing that's what he's supposed to do. But I'm just like, man, you took my case for free. Like, you're fighting to get me out of prison, and you writing me in solitary, asking me for permission to put my poem in the book to expose my gift to the world. Man, it made me feel such pride that he believed in me so much. That's the only poem in his whole book,
Right.
And it made me feel so proud that he saw that I had something special and unique to offer the world, man. And I'll be forever thankful for that.
No, congratulations, man. That's a milestone achievement. Brian also took it a step further, and he appointed a social worker, Maria. You speak a lot about Maria. Maria was someone who would constantly visit you and check in with you and write to you, and was just there for you as you were, fighting this case. How critical was she to your mental and emotional support during that time?
Man, you're a great moderator, man. I have to say that. But her name's Mariah. She just doesn't have the H. Yeah.
Okay. Maria, correct?
Yeah, she just doesn't have the H on the end. Yeah. Mariah changed my life. Like, because before her, she came into my life and didn't want anything out of me but the best for me. She was like that unconditional love that I got from my grandmother that had been missing since grandma went to Georgia. She got the GED book, copied the entire GED book, a chapter at a time, and sent it to me over many, many months. And I correct the GED book. I do the schoolwork, send it to her. She corrected, send it back, let me know what I need to work on. I'm in solitary. They're not letting me go to school. So she's feeding my mind, telling me, Ian, you're going to need this GED. You're going to need this GED. It's going to come in handy one day, And she sent me books that I would have never read. She said that if I was in high school, I would have read these books. She sent me Animal Farm by George. I think George Orwell wrote that book. She sent me 1984 by George Orwell. She sent me To Kill a Mockingbird. You know, she sent me the books. She said I would have read if I would have went into high school. Some of those books was excruciatingly boring, but I forced myself to read them, and because I wanted to please her. And she became my best friend, man. And I'm forever thankful that Brian hired that lady, because before her, I wasn't receiving any visits, no human contact. And so it was great, man, for her and I to develop the friendship we did.
Thank you for answering that. In about November 2019, man, you walked into what was then known as Friends of Island Academy, now known as the Youth Justice Network. You walked into our office, and I think at that time we were just hitting the submit button on an RFP to meet a deadline, and immediately you were so full of spirit, man, so full of energy. You made it known to everyone there that this was purposeful for you. It wasn't just a job, but it was something of purpose and of mission, in alignment to just what you felt like your life calling was. And, you know, why do you think it mattered to people? I mean, the work that you did with the Youth Justice Network, you know, why do you think it mattered to people coming out of the Bronx courtroom, for you to be there, to be able to give them groceries, to be able to give them a phone, a word of hope, because you were once that person. So why, at this moment now, here you are on the other end, being
Right.
that beacon of light to folks, soon as they walk out that courtroom, to say, here's a cell phone, here's some groceries, here's a word of hope, here's some Metro cards to get you from point A to point B. How essential was that? What did that mean?
I think for me it felt good, because I had been on both sides. I had been that guy getting out, and I had been through the reentry process. The reentry process is extremely, extremely difficult, reentering society. I think it's almost as tough as going to prison yourself, because there's so many different traps that send you right back. And the housing out here is crazy. So it felt good to be in that position to offer them some kind words. And I wasn't just a guy that didn't care, or a guy that had went to, and had been through that situation. I was somebody that actually lived it and was there, and I could feel their pain, man. And I could be like, bruh, it's gonna get better. Look at me, man. You know what I'm saying? Like Tupac say, if you believe you can achieve, just look at me,
I love it.
Yeah, man, that's what I felt.
And you also were involved in another project we did at Youth Justice Network, where you wrote letters and cards to young people who were doing time upstate, right?
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I was telling people how important that mail call is, the most important part of the day. And so for us to show, that they had somebody to care about them. It was during December, and we would send them Christmas cards. I remember that.
Mm-hmm. So my last, I guess, question, or I mean, I'll leave it for you to just make an open statement. See, it's, the time, we're approaching that time. I just want you to leave us with some closing words about, just the importance and the relevance of unconditional care and belief in young people, and how that could completely change a young person's trajectory and outcome. How essential is that?
It's very essential. And I think the best way for me to speak on that is to read you what I read to the judge on my last day in prison, November 2016. And I told the judge, I stand before you today, Your Honor, against all judicial odds. It is rare and improbable for someone with my particular set of circumstances to be standing before you again, to be re-sentenced for the fourth time for a sentence determined to be illegal and unconstitutional. Initially, I was a child sentenced to die in prison an adolescent full of aspirations, cast into this vast ocean filled with adult sharks and predators, and told to swim, survive, find my way back to shore the best way I could. Well, here I am, but I'm not unscathed by my journey. My heart bears the pain of my punishment. Look around this courtroom. It's different. The faces have changed from the original cast members. The judge, the state, the defense, my mom, dad, brother, etc. Everybody except Debbie and me. Two people with one common interest, waiting on the justice system to catch up to my remorse and her forgiveness. Hopefully, today is the day we can stand together as an example in a country deeply divided by racial dimensions and show that wrongs will be made right. And that English, like English lit teaches us all sentences have a period that brings them to an end.
All
You could do nothing but let me go after that.
An end. I love that. All sentences have a period that brings them to an end. What better way to close?
What better way to close, brother?
Ian, thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your truth. Thank you for your just relentless spirit in terms of how you convey that truth and your passion. You know, it's felt from beginning to end as I read your book, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you guys too, man. Thank you. You the best moderator I ever had, man. You're a great moderator, man. You need a job doing this.
So we're gonna open it up, I guess. Is this time we'll be opening it up for some questions from the audience?
Yeah. Any questions? Any questions from the audience?
Any questions? Any questions from the audience? I see our friends from Green Apple Books are back.
Hey, we have a couple of questions here. One is, and folks do like, we want to respect these gentlemen's time, but if you do have a question or two, enter them in the Q&A. One was, Ian, were there any books about being in prison that you read that were helpful to you during your time?
Yes. The Hurricane. I love that book. The Hurricane, Hurricane Carter was a book that inspired me and made me want to write my own story, man. Yeah, it was The Hurricane. That was a great book.
And a follow-up or related question to that, were there any poets that you read during your time that were particularly inspiring to you?
Tupac. Tupac was one of the poets that helped compel me to start writing poetry. I started rewriting his poetry as well as Maya Angelou. Those are the two that come to mind.
And then, that's a good question to end on. Grace here asks, what's next for you now that your memoir is published?
A lot. I'm going around the country speaking to different universities and colleges. I'm working on getting optioning the book and changing it into a movie. I'm working on taking the progress that we've made in New York with solitary confinement and try to extend that to other states, particularly my corrupt state of Florida. They definitely need some change because I have friends that have been in solitary confinement now 25 years. They've broken my record. So it's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm willing to do it.
Beautiful, thank you. I'll give you two the last word to say goodnight, but I do want to thank you both for joining us this evening and for Ian Manuel for writing such a wonderful book and sharing it with the world. Also, congratulations on its publication. And Messiah Ramkissoon, thank you for moderating and asking such wonderful questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, he was great.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. Thank you all for having me, and thank you, Ian, again for your powerful story. And I hope that it inspires some much needed change in this world. I say that from a very sincere place. because your story is not just a story, it's a truth, you know? And I think for too long, you know, society has been very surface in terms of how it's addressed this truth, how it's been solution oriented in terms of being able to support this truth. So I think this is the time. Like you said, my time will come. I think that time is now, man.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, man. And this has been a great presentation. Guys, support Green Apple Books and purchase the books from them. It'll be worth it, man. I guarantee it.
And on behalf of the Youth Justice Network, I want to just shout out the team as well.
Yes.
And we're happy to support Ian and what he's doing. And you know, we share the same mission and vision. So.
And thank the Youth Justice Network, man. Chris gave me a job when I needed it, man. I'll never forget that, man. They're doing good work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Youth Justice Network. Oh, they left a cute comment in the chat. Thanks, y'all. Right. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Let me see what this message is. Thank you.
Thank you.